Welcome to A Whole Lot of Wolves, episode 20 of season 4. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
I'm Paul LePage.
And joining us, our social media extraordinaire from Baltimore, Mr. Danny Paletti. How's it going, Danny?
Doing pretty good. Been a pretty good week, and I'm finishing off the last of the eggnog
The
from the
eggnog,
holidays.
nice. Nice. Yeah, we all survived with our livers, which is incredible, Paul, because this was a week to remember. Now, I know you've gone on record as saying the week that when Wolves won the Europa game for the first time with Willie Bolly kicking it in the injury time, followed by the Man City win was your favorite week ever being a Wolves fan. I don't anticipate this past that, but it's got to be up there, isn't it?
If that was like an A plus, then this is like at least a B plus, maybe an A minus in
Mm-hmm.
terms of just having um that level of comfort and feeling like that we're doing stuff that we should be doing and like an established Premier League team, which seems an absolute age since we've been able to say that now. You can get carried away, 3 wins on the bounce, think that we're going to go on a crazy European charge. But realistically, it is just a carbon copy of the form that any mid-table team goes through. So we hit the skids against West Ham, look terrible, and it's all doom and gloom. These results back to back make us look like Real Madrid on steroids. So we take the rough with the smooth, but for a Christmas period, 3 games back to back in such a short space of time, beating some opposition that we've struggled with previously, and obviously they're not where they expect to be, but any victory versus Chelsea is a good one. Um, so all of that with the Christmas spirit, with all the eggnog drunk, you can't beat it.
We all said in that podcast leading into those 3 games, we'd be happy with 4 points. And Danny, I don't know about you, but even when they first took the first two, I was like, well, now I don't feel good about this Everton game at all. And they still came through with the 3-0 win. I mean, how surprised are you on a scale of 1 to 10 that they got 9 points?
Uh, 10, 11,
Mhm.
23. I don't
Yeah.
know. All the way at the top. Yeah, I felt the same way where it's like because I was only expecting four, maybe 6 points. 6 points would have been great. That was kind of the stretch goal that, once we achieved that, it was like pressure's off. But then you immediately have that feeling of like pressure's off is not a good place to be for this team. I
For
want
this
the
team.
pressure on. Um, but I mean, I think it was also a good run of sort of fixtures where having that last game be at home and and just before New Year's is just, it creates the atmosphere in itself, plus all the stuff that was specific to that weekend. And so I think it sort of helped us over the line a bit. But each game was better than the last. I remember watching the Chelsea game at in the media room in Ohio at my partner's family's house, and that was a nervous affair. And then listening to the Brentford game on the way home, driving home in the rain all the way, it was not made any more calm by what I was listening to until the goals started flooding in. But then by the Everton game, I was starting to feel extremely relaxed. I mean, what more can you ask for?
I think just with that Everton game, as soon as that 5 minute mark came around and the tribute to Lamina, you just had a feeling that it
Yeah.
was a game that they would not lose. And
Yeah,
again, when we got the first goal and that celebration that went with it, it was just like building on top of it that we seemed invincible that day and nothing was going to stop us from getting 3 points in that Everton game. Just seemed like a perfect storm of everything coming together.
exactly.
Paul, I think that the man of the week for those 3 weeks was Lamina because he affected all 3 games. He scored in the first two, and like you said, that third one after Kilman scored and they went and got his kit and ran it over to the stands. I was like, they're not fucking losing this game. Like
Exactly.
they,
Yeah.
they were on a mission for him. I mean, do you think it's silly to even say he was man of the match in that Everton game?
I think that the spirit was certainly there, and that helped a lot. And his spirit and influence was certainly felt in the middle of the park, even though he wasn't playing, because I thought both Joe Gomez and Tommy Doyle in that game were phenomenal.
Mhm.
Doyle, personally, myself, was really close to man of the match. I think it could have been a toss up between those two. And I think even the Wolves social media channels have started trotting out that move that they put together in the second half that resulted in Gomez's shot. If that had gone in, you'd have been looking at just again another goal of the season, which we're totally unaccustomed to talking about, and to top off a performance for Joe Gomez that he certainly turned around any types of blips that he was going through in these past few weeks, and looking like a snip for his 15 million. And
Mhm.
if he starts adding those types of goals to his game, then geez, we've got a player on our hands.
He had 10 total tackles in that 4-1 Brentford win, which was more than any other Premier League player this season. And he's a youngster. I mean, it just Danny, this team is so easy to rally behind, I feel like. Um, because again, I feel like it's genuine good guys again. And I think a lot of that has to do with their young kids with a little chip on their shoulder to an extent. And there's not the
Yeah,
prima donnas, I feel like.
something I worried about in the transition from last season to this season was that like, it felt like we all sort of rallied around the flag last season because we were in trouble. And even with the loss of some important names, I just felt like, is the spirit still going to be there to keep fighting? Because like I still felt confident that this was a team that was good enough to stay in the league,
Yeah.
and fairly comfortably so. Not like, pushing for Europe or even necessarily in the middle of the table, but uh, safe without a ton of effort. And I was just worried that when that set in, if that sets you up for a rough season where you're just can't quite recapture that same, backs against the wall feeling. Um, but whether it's, the recruitment, which I think plays a part, the people that we got last January, or Gary O'Neill, or, a combination of all those things, and maybe some other factors as well. Maybe Kilman growing into his role. It just feels like apart from the connection with the fans, which I'm sure we'll talk about. It's just like there is still that sort of like scrappy, um, team quality about it, where
Mhm.
like everybody's fighting for each other again, which is really refreshing to be honest.
Yeah, and you mentioned the bond with the fans. I really enjoyed Gary O'Neill coming out and going, "Look, I got it. Wolverhampton fans probably weren't too thrilled when I got hired. I get it." And I feel like, yes, that's going to add a chip on your shoulder, but I think most people would kind of hold it against the fans for feeling that way. And it seems like with O'Neill, he was more motivated to prove the fans wrong, but also to embrace them at the same time. It almost made him closer. Paul, how rare is that? Do you feel like from a football manager?
I think it is pretty rare, but what I think is the saving grace here and what stands O'Neill in good stead is that he's not too far removed from actually being out on the pitch. So he gets it. He gets that. He gets the modern day um, fan, that thirst for immediate success and everything that goes with it. So I think it's been a combination of him reacting to that. I think the club have done a phenomenal PR exercise on him. I really do, in terms of his sound bites, making himself available. Um, but I think, even if he has to recognize that he's got a job himself to do in terms of presenting himself in the right way, he's done it very genuinely. And what he comes out with, the average supporter listens to and understands. It's not a bunch of waffle. It's not a bunch of cliches. It's genuine. And I think if you've got any type of football coach, media facing, who's coming out with those statements, presenting himself and the team, he's very much a team first coach and putting those guys first and saying that's what he's here to do rather than look at me. I've put this team on a 3-match winning run and they're fantastic. It's always been about the team. So I think that stands him in good stead.
Danny, is it surreal to think that a year ago Wolves were sitting dead bottom of the table?
Yeah. We've come a long way, baby. Yeah, I mean, a little over a year ago, because of course I remember watching that 8-Nori winner back in Ohio. But it's a crazy thing to look back on, especially like I said, with the squad that's been built over the last year, and is continuing to be built, to think about the players that came in January and how they're still having an impact. I think we talked on a previous podcast when I looked back through my text with my friend about Lamina and what I had to say about him then. I was like, yeah, I think he's a decent depth option. I think like he's gonna provide some good backup to Neves when we need someone to be a DM, whatever. And clearly from that, I could not fathom, the role that he would end up playing, both, as a teammate, but also on the pitch, to the point where, I mean, can keep this a little bit quiet, but he's one of the better DMs in the league currently. That's something I've been thinking about as he keeps scoring goals, scoring against Chelsea and against Brentford. And it's not like he's at the end of his career, and people keep talking about the youngsters that we have, which people might come after. I mean, there are plenty of teams that would like a Lamina in them, whether for depth or as a starter, because if you can get him doing that in any other team, that's something that a ton of teams need. I mean, you think of, God, I don't even want to speak it into existence, but but all the problems Man United are having keeping goals out. Let's just not think about it anymore. Let's not go into it.
I don't think he'd be up for a move in January. I think he's really bedded into the Wolverhampton spirit.
No, I agree.
Now, come summer, when you start seeing the dollar signs, that could change. But he seems like somebody that he's gone to places for the dollar signs, and he wasn't happy.
Yeah.
So it could be one of those deals. And Paul, that January window now, we're looking back. Holy cow. Dawson, Lamina, Gomez, Cunha, like that has to go down as one of the best transfer windows for Wolves, right?
And
Especially for
Sarabia. Don't forget
January.
Sarabia.
Oh yeah,
Don't forget my
Sarabia.
boy
Yeah.
Sarabia. Yeah. I
Jeez.
listed in the show notes, I started writing unsung heroes over the course of these 3 games and the form that they've come into. But really, it's more like heroes in general, just because the collection of them together have been phenomenal. But right towards the top of the list for me is Sarabia, because he's come in, he's kept his place, he's creating, he's found like a knack of fitting in pretty much perfectly with the way that the team's set up, even playing 5 at the back, where I think previously he was looked at as a little bit of a luxury and it was a struggle to accommodate him. Now he's effectively one of the heartbeats of the creative output. You add that to the fact that he can deliver a dead ball, and we genuinely look a threat from corners, which again, I'm nearly falling off my chair in saying that, but when you've got Lamina scoring back to back from headed goals that have either come directly or reworked from a corner, then you're looking at a big team with the 3 at the back, Toty, Dawson, Kilman coming up. Lamina's a threat. You've got Sarabia delivering those balls in. So that's another weapon in our armory. So mention him. Talked about Joe Gomez already. Lamina. Cunha is just out of this world at the moment.
He's on
And
fire right now.
unbelievably so. And if this keeps up, he's making that initial outlay look like an absolute steal. Whereas this time last year, we were all really nervous that they're throwing all the eggs in this Cunha basket, and will he deliver? And it might have took him time to settle in a new country, different league, but he's certainly delivering. And at the same time, he seems like such a sound guy. And I think what we finally rediscovered is that we've got that spine of the team back. We've got that Raul replacement of sorts with a combination of Cunha and Wang now. We've got that Neves replacement with Lamina certainly in the middle, and then at the back we've got that solidity again from the three centre backs, and often a reliable goalie with his flaws, but certainly when you add all that together, we've just got that spine of the team, and it looks really, really solid.
I thought it was funny on that Wolverhampton Wanderers news Facebook group. Oh yeah, Cunha's awful. This was after the 4-1. After the 4-1, Cunha's awful. Wolves should have had like 6 goals in there if Cunha could do anything and blah blah blah. And I was like, what the fuck are we doing? We just won 4-1 and you're sitting there complaining about Cunha? That no sense to me. It's just absolutely absurd. I agree with you guys. Yeah, here it is. Why didn't we bring a striker on in the second half? Cunha wasn't here, couldn't run or score. Bring Sasa on. We could have scored 5 or 6 easily, but no striker. People are idiots, man. That's like that dude
that's the internet for you.
Oh, that's like that Everton guy on Sunday who was trying to be like, oh yeah, all the Wolves players should have gotten reds for time wasting for getting the jersey. Come on, man. I hate people.
It honestly shocked me. Maybe it's because I wasn't as deep into Wolves Twitter in our most recent good form, under Nuno.
Mm-hmm.
But the shocking quality of takes even after a good run of games. So I had a little interaction with someone on Twitter while I was out celebrating the Everton win. So keep in mind, we've currently taken 9 points from 9 and scored 9 goals. And I just put out this tweet that said, did anyone have a poor performance? I was trying to think about anybody who you could say who wasn't pulling their weight at least, if not, performing really well. And I just ran through, some names I thought stood out to me. And I got this reply that was, "You are so far from being correct. Man of the match is Sarabia. Ryan Aït-Nouri is useless. Bueno is a mile better." And I just said, I thought everyone played well, Sarabia, Bueno included. And he just said, "Ryan Aït-Nouri does nothing other than piss around with the ball. Come back at me at the end of the season." It's just, we just watched him ball out against 3 different teams, or 2 different teams.
I generally think that's been a massive realization of how important he is to the team, because we generally look like a different team when he's starting, and whether it's balance or communication or what he offers attacking wise, it's just night and day to me, and he fits in perfectly.
Him and Wang work really well together on that left side. They really have good, not even not a verbal communication. They just know where the other one's going to be.
Yeah. I mean, he drives us up the field. It's not that difficult, which, I mean, I went into a whole thing with this guy until I got bored of it, but I won't recap it all. But he drives us up the field. It's the same reason that Cunha is valuable, because he moves us up the field. He carries the ball with him. Some players move us up the field like Tommy Doyle with passing. Ryan Aït-Nouri, with the ball at his feet, moves us up the field. And he's also I don't know. We don't need to go into it. But he's pocketed solid. Get out of here, man.
Yeah. I couldn't believe that with the Cunha one too. I was just like, we just won 4-1 and we're complaining that we didn't score 5 or 6.
We can't just enjoy a good thing.
Believe, man. It's nuts. Paul, what was your favorite goal of the 9 that were scored?
That's a good one now that I'm thinking. I'm thinking
hard
through all of them. It is hard to choose. I'm thinking like it's like if one was majorly significant. I think what I'll go for is probably Cunha's versus Everton, in
Mhm.
that for that game, and again, it's what gave me the confidence in a weird way was um, the chances that Wang was squandering. Like he had that really early-ish one, I think within the first 10 minutes when he rounded Pickford, and it was like, just shoot, and that opportunity. So why I really like that Cunha one is that he set it up. So even though he wasn't on the score sheet in that game, he was a threat, and he really gave their backline the runaround. So if you're able to do that in a game, not score but still directly impact that, I'm going for that goal, just for the combination play and having Cunha in the right place at the right time to get on the score sheet.
Danny, what was your favorite of the goals?
Yeah, that was a really good one. Like Paul said, sort of unsung in the sense that, um, it wasn't the fastest counterattack. It was just, a well set up play. So I just want to call out that, it's just something that we don't do, that sort of like, um, direct, but not necessarily with pace, um, where the space is made and then we move into the box and score. Simple. But obviously, I have to pick the second Huang goal against Brentford. I didn't get to see it live. I had to watch it back the next morning because, like I said, I was in the car at the time. Um, but good Lord, that ball. I can't remember if I put it in our group text or a different group text, but I said that touch before the shot is Podence-esque. Dare I say it? um, no, I mean it was phenomenal. It's just like I think they said it in the comment, and at least one of the different commentaries I listened to, that it's just the mark of a striker who is full of confidence. He takes that ball, it's not that simple. It's kind of coming over his shoulder in a way where he has to sort of let it catch up to him. And then to take that touch and that flick and then strike that volley is so difficult. And it's one of those that is more impressive because of how easy he makes it look.
I think when he scored that 10th goal, didn't he have 10 goals with 11 shots on goal for the year?
Yeah, that's a kind of a wild stat. And I actually looked into it because FB Ref had it as 10 out of 10. And then I think somewhere else, like the Premier League, somewhere else said 10 out of 12. And it's like all a question, like there's a header against Palace and a shot against Arsenal, and it's just whether or not you count those as being on target. But yeah, he has something in the neighborhood of 10 goals, well, now 11 goals out of 11 shots on target, which is just a wild conversion rate.
I did love Huang's goal after Collins just inexplicably just kicked it back to the keeper.
Oh man.
I
Oh,
loved how just
Collins.
Huang took his time. He's just like do 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 do, and then where blasted in there. That's those are always fun when you got the open goal like that.
Even
Um,
that was really well taken, just because I
mhm.
mean he could have gone down. He
Yeah.
he had a touch just before the keeper gets there, and he could just as easily go down and hope for a penalty if he doesn't feel confident that he's going to get in eventually. But he slows up a second and gets it past the keeper, knowing that he's going to put it in. And I was really impressed with that, even though obviously it looks like they completely gifted it to us.
And the nice thing, Paul, no VAR drama in any of these games.
Amazing.
I know, doesn't it
That
make a
was that
difference?
was the Christmas miracle.
Yeah. I
Truly.
think especially looking at that Chelsea game, like a late winning goal, it was just like, when's it gonna happen? How are they gonna discount that? So
Mhm.
I will admit, when Sterling dove in
Yeah.
those last minutes, and even though I could see on the replays that it was obvious no contact, I was just like, this is gonna get given. This is gonna get given. This is just like the one against Newcastle. This is going to get given by VAR.
Hmm. Yeah. I hate Sterling so much. I'm so glad he's not an American. I don't know how you can deal rooting for him on the national team, Paul.
It's a struggle. They were talking about his absence on our commentary, and I was like, well, I quite like it that he's not involved. So
Our good friend Clive used to call him a waste of skin. That was always enjoyed that. Okay, Paul. So how do they carry this momentum, and how does the second half of the season look now?
I think it really filters into this next game, and if they can win on Saturday, it'll kind of be like the cherry on the top of the cake for this stage of the season, where realistically, that those wins over the Christmas period pretty much made us safe, as 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 weird as that sounds, that's the feeling and the feel good factor, and what it leads to. You just now know they got the momentum that they're not going to drop enough points to get dragged into a relegation battle. So I think a win on Friday, a passage through into the fourth round of the cup, that's where we can really kick on momentum wise, and then you're going to get a lot of fans really thrive off of that and think we can have a good second half of the season. You can take the handbrake off. He's got a team that now we know it's got goals in it. So what can it achieve? And if we have this good run added to potentially an FA Cup run, which we could go pretty deep in, it could be turning into a phenomenal season.
Yeah, it's super excited. Danny, have your expectations changed now just with the last month and really the home stretch that they've been on lately?
Um, yeah, I try to think of it more in terms of form. So I mean, the short answer is yes. I want us to continue with a similar sort of points per game, if we can. And and if anything, it should, in theory, improve because I think we talked about a lot in the first part of the season that we had such a tough schedule. And part of that was that we were playing all the quote unquote winnable games, Luton, Burnley, Sheffield away, and we were playing all the difficult games at home, City and Spurs. Of course, we saw how that played out. So now, in theory, it should be flipped. The last half of the season, we should see more of the teams around us or below us um, at home, and then we'll have to go away to City and go away to Spurs and whatever. So, I mean, there should be a better opportunity to pick up points as long as we keep picking up good points at home. You know, those are all great theories, and I'm sure that we'll have our ups and downs, but I think, I have sort of slightly readjusted my thinking about what I expect from the rest of the season. Not that I necessarily expect us to be pushing for Europe, because I just think, especially, it's so dependent on the table, and it looks like such a weird year to me where you have these teams like say Brighton, who were great last year and are struggling but are still above us, and then other teams like Villa, who were nowhere near the top last year. They snuck into Europe, but like are doing fantastically. It's just such a weird season, and relying on the table to let you into Europe, I think, is a fool's game. But I think, just seeing a similar level of points per game, I'd be happy if we're still uh keeping good results at Molineux and getting the odd result on the road. And honestly, that's in some ways more important, is like getting good, solid displays away from home, especially defensively. That would represent a good improvement, and I'd be pretty happy with that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, this is all this little hot streak does is adds a little more fuel to the fire with how will they back Gary O'Neill? And Paul, the transfer window has been open for 2 days. Already, we've seen Fabio leave on loan, which I saw some people were upset he wasn't just sold outright, but then kind of reading more on FFP, it makes more sense to just have him go out on loan, and also hope he brings in some of his value. Um, but then a surprising one too. It looks like Frazier's going out on loan, and Sasa, that's been talked about, but O'Neal said, well, he can't leave right now because he's like the only true number 9 on the roster. What do you think's going to happen there at the number 9 spot?
Good question. I think they will, for this particular window and the cushion that's been given to them, thanks to the performances and where they are in the league table, I don't think they have to panic in any way with the type of player that they want to bring in. I've got a feeling they've probably got their top 3 targets. If they can't get their main one, they may sit on it and get someone of a similar profile, not a marquee name by any stretch, but someone that could come in and take up that more number 9 profile that it looks like O'Neal wants in terms of leading the line and being that central fulcrum, knowing that if during the summer, then if FFP shackles are totally removed or their main guy or guys come available, they can then go after them and know that their guy from this winter could still battle for a place off the bench and be there should it be needed in terms of depth. So I generally see us, and it's going to cause consternation because they'll be saying, oh, well, why are they going after him? But I could definitely see this type of player being a Trey Adams from Southampton. They'll revisit that, bring him in for 6 to 8 million because he's in the last few months of his contract. But personally, I could see him doing quite well, and I could see him chipping in with 4 or 5, maybe 6 goals through to the end of the season and looking like quite an astute signing. And then being ready-made as that guy off the bench or that squad player for next season.
Of course, Danny, you also have to think too, how much do they really want to invest, considering nobody they bring in is probably going to be a regular starter. Best case would be, like Paul was saying, a squad player, just somebody that rotates because of fitness.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Paul said, I think it's going to be tricky and extra tricky because January is just inherently difficult to work in. I don't think I appreciated that enough until thinking about, in the lead up to this January, the whole Fabio scenario where it's like, we were always on the other end of it. God, we need a number 9 or we need whatever. And it's so difficult because if a player's doing well at another club, they don't want to give them up and you got to pay extra. If they're out of favor, then do you really want them? Like, is there a reason that they're out of favor, or they're not playing well or whatever? But it can also be difficult from the other end of it, when you have this out of favor player like Fabio, is it possible to get what you see as a fair valuation, even though he's down the pecking order at Wolves? He still could be a very useful player to someone like Rangers or someone in Europe. And so I think for that reason, like Paul said, I hope and I believe that, what we've seen from Hobbs so far is that we're not going to be, held over a barrel for a player, especially one that is not someone that can be useful over the next 18 months. And like, that's sort of the time frame, because I was just thinking the other day that, it's a weird zero-sum game because it's not like you think about going shopping for a striker or any soccer player and you think like, oh, well, if you don't get your first choice, you just get your second choice. Like, you're going to the supermarket and it's like, I'm going to get an apple. And if I don't find a perfect apple, then I'll get an apple that has like a small bruise on it. And that's fine too. But the difference is that, like, at the end of the season, you still have that apple and they're on a contract for 2 more years, So it's like, if you go with your second choice and there was a reason why they were your second choice, they're still on your books. And even if your first choice is now available in the summer, you're not going to go get them. So I think that they're going to keep that in mind. It looks like it. It looks like they're not. I don't know. It's hard to say, but the language I'm hearing from Gary O'Neill is that as much as the Sasha to Frankfurt deal seems very likely, I don't think that it's, a foregone conclusion. I think that there is a scenario where he stays just because we can't get our targets in, and we say, look, you're going to get the minutes you're going to get. And if it's really still not working out in the summer, then we'll move you on then.
I think what I enjoyed, Paul, was, news came out that they got Fletcher Holman, the 19-year-old striker, and people were mad about it. Like, oh, what are we doing? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, I mean, it's still good to get some young players coming in. Not everybody's going to come into the squad and score 20 goals.
You mean the next Jamie Vardy?
Yes, he has the next Jamie Vardy. He does kind of have the same haircut, doesn't he? So it does look like Rodrigo Gomez from Braga has some legs. What do you think about that, Paul? And what do you consider to be a fair price?
What stood out to me with that particular one is, well, it's a couple of things really, is that they're very distinct in the type of player that they're going after, and that he seems to fit from the clips on YouTube and the scout reports and things like that. He seems to fill potentially 2 or 3 different roles, which I think that versatility is a big deal for O'Neill. So I think that stands him in good stead. I think there's potentially a role for him as an attacking right wing back, which we haven't got, and Semedo hasn't got that genuine challenge when it comes to someone coming off the bench that we could look to offensive authority on to try and close out a game. So that's interesting. And the other fact I think is that he's still part of the Mendes stable. So that door's not being closed, but it's certainly, I feel, potentially a statement from Hobbs to say, yeah, we'll take a look at your guys. If they're fit, but we're not going to buy an apple that's bruised just because it comes from the Mendes stable. We've got some other options on our in our grocery aisle now. Thank you, Mr. Mendes.
Yeah, I think Geddes was the last bad apple that we got from him. I'm okay with us not completely shutting the door on Mendes because he has a shitload of clients. We just, definitely don't rely on him. Sasa, big sassy, Paul. Would you leave if you were him? Would you request to leave?
I would do, just based on the fact that it's a Euros year, so he's in contention, I think, for the Austrian squad. He's got that at the back of his mind. He's still recovering from a serious knee injury as well, so you've got that dynamic at the same time. You need to build up your minutes to come back from injury. You need to, at the same time, play yourself into form to try and make your national squad. So he's in a pretty tricky conundrum. So even if he loved it here and he had some options off the bench to come on and score like he has done, then I think the option just to go elsewhere and guarantee a certain amount of minutes is just important for him individually for what he wants to do.
It's sad, Danny. I thought that's the one criticism I may have of O'Neill is why he hasn't used Sassy, but I don't know. Maybe it's just something on the training ground we're not seeing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's clearly just, and it to a certain extent it makes sense. You look at what he likes out of the forwards. Clearly, pressing intensity is a big thing for him, and I think Sasha does a decent job for who he is, but it's just based on his build, it's never going to really be a huge part of his game. I was shocked that we saw so many minutes from Cunha over these 3 games in basically a week, but clearly that guy can go forever. And I don't think that if Sasha were a starting striker, that he would be able to complete those kinds of minutes doing that job. I mean, Sasha's always been a bit of a weird one. I mean, I think most fans always liked him. He seems like such a nice guy. He's clearly, got a great goals to minutes ratio for the times that he has come on. But at the same time, at the time, I was very curious what Bruno Lage wanted with that profile of player. It didn't make a ton of sense to me then, and then we never got to find out because he played 45 minutes. And we maybe never will find out, what the plan was for him. And it just doesn't seem like the plan is to play to his strengths, which is, I will say, to your point, a little bit unfair because I do think that, he gets cast as this head on a stick that is going to just head in goals. But
Yeah,
really,
he's
like
great with his feet.
for such a big guy, he's got some very good ball control. He has had some very good longer passes to set people up. So that's always going to be maybe a what if kind of thing. And if he does go, I'm definitely going to be interested in what happens with him because I think, there's a lot of talent there. It's just maybe it just doesn't fit. But yeah, maybe something that we're not seeing.
So other than Sasa and Johnny, who's almost assuredly dead man walking if somebody will give us, a couple quid. Maybe it should be for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, Paul. I don't know. Do you see anybody else leaving, Paul?
Never gonna let it
Anybody
go.
else on the way out?
I don't. I think we got a nucleus of a good squad, and other than potentially those on the fringes, the youngsters who might be looking for that loan move, I think we're pretty well set, and I think the way we're doing right now certainly gives those that are maybe attracting the attention of the vultures some confidence that they could at least stick around for to see how the season works out. Come and then come the end of the season, take a look at where they are and what they could accomplish. Because if they've had a phenomenal season, it could set them up for that big move, or it could say, well, we're on the cusp of something special here at the Wolves. We've gone and we've got to find ourselves in the Europa Conference League, something crazy like that, which many wouldn't have imagined. And there you go, you play in European competition again. So I think there's enough positives to keep the momentum going forward, certainly to the end of the season.
I'd consider it a huge success if they played in conference. Like that would be huge. And
Oh,
I do
absolutely.
agree. It was like the Europa one. I mean, everyone on that team wanted to stay to get that European experience. And I do feel like even if they did make that third level tournament, it'd still keep a lot of guys, I think, because they'd probably look at it and go, we could win an actual trophy here, even though it's not the biggest trophy. We could win a trophy and, earn a spot in the level up. It'd be interesting.
Yeah. The only other one that I'd say could potentially go out is, and I know this doesn't quite count because he wasn't here before, but Yersa Mosquera is back from being in the MLS and apparently being looked at. So if they feel like he's not up to being a backup, which I mean, like that would be if he was up to being a backup for our three main center backs plus Santi Bueno, that would work out great because having 5 for those 3 positions would be perfect. But I think that there's a decent-ish chance that they decide that he needs another loan for the second half of the season, and then they find someone else to be a backup center back.
And I think that's a good plan for these young guys. Get them a lot of experience in MLS. Not a great league, not a bad league. Then have them come back, have them go down to championship, which is step up, I think, from MLS, and then see what you got. So that could be good. I mean, we also have to think, hey, next year Dawson's not getting any younger. Kilman and Toady may be getting some looks next year, so that could be I mean, Real Madrid wants Tony Gomez, right? Paul, overall, if I had to give you, yeah, put your mortgage on it, how many incomings for Wolves this month for the first team?
Two.
Two.
Two. I think we'll get we'll get that centre forward, and we'll get an attacking player as like a wide forward or a winger.
Okay. Danny?
Yeah, I think two, maybe three. And the third being, someone sort of similarly who's flexible, who can either play somewhere across the back line or maybe a scenario where they're also capable of playing like a wing back role or something. I think there's a possibility of that, again, sort of depending on what's going on with Muscare and whatever. But yeah, two or three.
I could see one. I could see just one coming in. And again,
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't be upset with it. I do think we need that number 9 though. So
Well, and again, how much do you want to upset what's going pretty well at the time?
bingo.
So
Bingo. Yeah, you don't want to bring in somebody that's going to be pissed off because they're not getting a ton of minutes, because that does not seem to be that big of an issue with this squad. I think Sarabia was a little miffed for a while, but he seems, he's earned his place back. All right. FA Cup third round. It's kicking off on Friday at 2:15 Eastern, 1:15 Central. It's everybody's favorite middle of the day fixtures.
Because of the international audience demand, by all accounts. So.
Yeah. So with us to help preview the opposition from the Brentford NYC Bees supporting group, it's Abhi Goyal. How's it going, Abhi?
Good, how are you?
Good,
I
good.
mean, it could
So
be better, but life is good.
life is good. So, it's kind of Groundhog Day with a repeat of a fixture that happened less than a week ago. Obviously, we'd be hoping for the same results, but how relevant do you think that result is in terms of the approach you guys are going to take?
I wouldn't consider this upcoming game to be pretty similar to the next one. I think in a different season, maybe we would have considered this Prem matchup kind of a warm-up for an FA Cup match. I believe we actually play you for our spring fixture not too long after that, so we'll get pretty sick of each other, I think, by the end of it. But I think the situation that the club's dealing with right now, we have so many games lost to injury. We are so far down our roster that I think that's really forced a change in our strategy between the two games. And I don't know if Brentford can really afford to treat this FA Cup fixture with maybe the gusto they would have gone at it last year. Or just in any year where we had a little bit more of the roster freed up. I think maybe in normal game circumstances we would have tried to rotate the squad a little bit, but there would have been enough strength in the lineup to really cause a challenge. And I think now, after the last stretch of games, it really has become kind of an emergency rotation, just avoiding injuries at all costs, leading into an international break and making it a longer break than we otherwise could have.
So in terms of that squad depth, are we likely to see any of the youngsters or emerging talent that you've got coming through that our listeners might not have seen up to this point playing for Brentford?
Yeah, I think necessarily. I think I think both that and a couple of the youngsters you have seen. I think these squad depth issues, they create other issues in turn. I think in our matchup last week, you probably saw some substitutions happen that wouldn't otherwise be very rational, but we're now making substitutions to save our game healthy players rather than making them necessarily in response to the tactical situation in the game. So there are a couple youngsters who have been rushed into service a little bit sooner than we would have liked. There probably are going to be a couple that that are in the squad for the first time. At least that's what we think from the fan perspective. But there are a few people who have gotten game experience this season who we're pretty excited about. Yarmuluk started the game against the Wolves, so I wouldn't be surprised if he starts again. And then a lot of our regular starters are pretty young also, but I think at this point we really just have to preserve their legs.
So what do you imagine the lineup looking like, and what type of formation?
I have to think the lineup is going to be a good bit younger. We might put in a captain with some seniority just to command the squad and give them a learning experience. Maybe not one of our regular captains. We really don't have a lot of depth at center back that I know of, so we might see some of our regular starters at center back again, which at this point I believe would be a selection of Collins and Pinnock, and I do think me would be available again for this FA Cup matchup, right? So that's 2 of 3, and that's a situation where at least on defense we'd have a little more experience, and I think it's basically anything goes from there on out. On the attack, we have a couple of youngsters like Ola Kigbe, who has been in the squad but not really gotten minutes yet. This might be a good opportunity for that. In a formation, we've been kind of switching between a back 5 and a back 4 a couple times lately. I don't think it really could have gone worse for Brentford in the last matchup against Wolves, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a different defensive approach, especially one that allows the back line to push up a little higher, given the way that the Wolves offense was kind of poaching our back passes in the last time we matched up.
And finally, Nathan Collins, was he a secret agent for us?
So, I don't want to badmouth him too much because he is starter quality, I believe. This was a really uncharacteristically bad game, right? Players have them. The trouble is, again, when you have this thin of a squad, one standout bad performance really hits hard. And I think last game already you saw his head was back on his shoulders. So I think if he's back in this game, I think it'll be more about a redemption story, or at least I hope. So I don't think secret agent so much as somebody in the crowd was saying something that got to him, or he was just having a really, really bad week.
For the record, I was very disappointed that we sold him off because I do think he's quality.
Yeah, and I mean, but for last week, I would have been talking him up. I think I really like seeing him play.
And finally, Arby, what can we do collectively for everyone's sanity to avoid a replay and not have 4 games in the space of a month?
Oh, to avoid a replay, I think you should rotate your squad too, is what I think. Maybe give Huang a break.
Well,
You
good
know, you've
news.
seen.
He's got an
I
enforced
must
one.
have missed the news.
He's
Oh, okay.
he's in the Asia Cup, so there you go.
All right, there. Yeah, there you go. He was a killer against us, and I mean he's been really solid this season. So, I think that's one thing. This FA Cup matchup does kind of come at an inconvenient part of the season because I think it's a great tournament, but I think there's a lot of clubs that would like to be able to afford to treat it with a little more weight. So I think there's a bit of that, and I think there's also just remembering that it's a different competition than the league. Our next league matchup might be similar to our last one, but this is kind of a break in between.
Well, thanks. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, appreciate you making the time, RB.
Thanks for having me. Always good to talk with fans of other teams.
Whole Lotta Wolves is self-funded, so if you're interested in sponsorship opportunities as a way to reach a niche audience, email hello@wholelottawolves.com for our sponsor packages. Just want to make a contribution as a listener who enjoys the show? Then head to buymeacoffee.com/WLWpod. That's buymeacoffee.com/WLWpod. We greatly appreciate any contribution. Up the Wolves.
All right. Thanks to Abhi Goyal from Brentford NYC Bees. Paul, what do you think about that?
I think it factors in to similarly what we're facing, not so much in terms of an injury crisis, but having to balance the demands of this point in the season, the loss of players who've gone away on international duty. Like, we've lost 2 starters. And when you take that out of your starting 11, that's a lot to make up, So, especially given both of their impacts this year, and again how they fit into this particular team, so that's a big deal for me. But I think what it'll lead to is that I think he'll still go out there and be competitive, but we will have some rotation based on what worked well in that victory the other day. And by that, I could see potentially Breno coming back in for Dawson. I could see Tommy Doyle retaining his place. I could see Neto starting and saying, go on and have 60 minutes. Well, have the first half, see how you're feeling after 55, 60. Cunha, I think at the moment they've got to, purely based on Wang not being there. He'll be central. And I could see Sarabia getting rested and see Bellegarde start and in that wider right midfield position. But even if you had that, maybe question mark over Sarr versus Bentley, the whole, do you shuffle your keeper for the cup competition? I wouldn't be surprised if Bentley starts.
Yeah.
But even then, it's a pretty strong and tasty 11 to go away in a formation he knows that's pretty solid to a team like Brentford that they're up against it based on what we know about their depth.
One interesting lineup choice is going to be, this would be an ideal time to have had Fabio or Big Sassy start up front. Well, Fabio's gone. I would be surprised if they threw Sasa out there, just because he might be on the move and they don't want to take the chance of him getting hurt. I don't know. So is this another Cunha game, Danny?
Yeah, I think it has to be. I just think, we're going to have almost a whole week between games, which is not a luxury that we've had recently. I know that the players got a day or 2 off, but still, they're going to have plenty of time to recover. And in addition, there's a couple of weeks break after this, as long as you don't end up in a replay. And I think that the club just announced that they're going to Abu Dhabi for some warm weather training. Must be nice. I just think there's not really a reason to rotate a lot. You look at like the way Brentford might respond and say like, well, they're not quite yet in a relegation battle, but they're getting close, and so there's a decent reason to rotate. But when you consider that the next game that we have isn't until the 22nd, and instead you've got 2 weeks worth of training where you can manage the load that the players have, I just don't really see a reason to do any unnecessary rotating except to give players minutes. So it's like, it's different from having to limit their minutes. I don't see a reason to limit a player like Cunha's minutes, but I do see a reason to give a player like Santi Bueno minutes, because or Doherty, players like that, or Boubacar Traore, players that haven't gotten a ton of minutes yet, but we might find it useful to give them some time. So I mean, like Paul, I think it's going to be something similar. You're going to see Santi Bueno come in. You're going to see possibly Matt Doherty come in. Probably see Boubacar Traore.
We won't see Boubacar.
Oh, that's right. Boubacar is going to be gone, of course.
Yeah.
So we won't see Boubacar. We'll see Tommy Doyle, hopefully, because actually he looked really great against Everton. So
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of Tommy Doyle here this month, which is not a bad thing. Paul, do you kind of think maybe our lack of depth might actually help make an FA Cup run because of the fact that
I
we
think
don't
so.
have those?
He's effectively got to go for it based on the hand that's being dealt. And even when you do switch out those players like Iran for a Breno, it could be really good opportunity for him to play himself into form in a team that's doing well, and he hasn't hit his heights that we've seen him previously, but game time's important, and these big games, these opportunities can help bring you into form. So it could be the catalyst for a lot of success.
Well, guys, let's look at the prediction scoreboard. Even though Wolves got a big 9 points, we did not come close to that. The only one, the winner for the week, was Alex. He got a big 3 points with the 2-1 Chelsea prediction, or 2-1 Wolves win over Chelsea. Other than that, Danny, you got a point for a win versus Everton. Paul, you had the win versus Brentford, so I got a point. And I got 1 point for the Everton one. So if we're looking at the standings, Alex has now tied the guest spot with 16 points. Danny, you've got 14. I've got 13. And Paul, you really needed this week, and it didn't come through, so you still got 7. But you could have a big week at any point. You just need to go on a run, right?
Just like the team. Just like the team.
Just like the team. So, Danny, what we got this week with the cup?
Yeah, we should have been more bold. All of us picked 1 win out of those 3, and that explains exactly what happened. And Alex got lucky with the score. That's exactly what happened. And if anybody would have guessed 2 or 3 wins, they'd be laughing right now. I think for this one, I feel pretty good about the prediction. Whether or not it's a smart prediction or not, who knows. But I like a 2-0 Wolves win. I think Brentford rotate. I think Wolves will rotate a bit, but still, high on a lot of confidence. And a lot of those players are still going to be in there. You're going to have Neto returning. But these games are always weird and cagey because you just come off all these rushed games and you kind of don't know what to do with all that energy, and plus going away for training afterwards. So 2-0 feels about right. And I would love an away clean sheet.
Paul?
That was pretty much my exact prediction and reasoning. So whilst I'd be confident with that happening, I'm going to say that it'll be a little. We won't go in there and it'll be a breeze, like a 4-1 result. It'll actually be quite cagey. We'll still win, but it'll be a later 1-0 in the second half win.
I think Neto being back really gives Wolves an advantage here. However, it's a cup game, guys, right? Like, we just know we're going to get a stupid replay out of this. So I'm going to say it's going to be a 1-1 draw, unfortunately. But at least then we'd get the return back at Molyneux. So there you go. Okay.
Don't put that draw on us.
Huh? Don't you put that
Don't put that draw on us.
Okay, Danny. We got no stupid questions?
Yeah, that's right. We didn't put the language that we normally use for no stupid questions in the show notes. So no stupid questions the time that you sent us questions. You can reach out to us on Twitter. That's WLW Pod on Twitter or X. Please don't message us if you call it X, though. That's a no-no. You can also reach out at hello@wholelotofwolves.com. Our first no stupid question comes from Steve Young on Twitter, who says, this one goes back to the Christmas Eve fixture against Chelsea. What was the tactical change that Gary O'Neill made to the team after he told Ait-Nouri to feign injury? I think it was around 10 to 15 minutes in. And that is correct.
You said you know what the change was, right, Danny?
Yeah. Should have had you read it and then ask me. Yes, I went back. I remembered I saw a good Twitter thread on this. So I will tell our listeners that the user is EBL2017. Had a good thread on this on Christmas Day. So either they don't celebrate Christmas or they're extremely committed to the cause. But they have a good thread about the game generally, but a section of it about the tactical change. Basically, it seems like it came out of the fact that that Chelsea normally sort of play a four at the back, sort of a 4-1-5 system, and actually they set up 3-2-5, sort of matching us up in a way. And that was probably kind of unexpected for Gary O'Neill, which is why we sort of didn't quite get into the game until that moment. But the change, I mean, I'm not a tactico. I won't deign to figure this all out on my own. You can go look at the thread, but basically it seems like we are sort of reverting to matching them up, and for a lot of the rest of the game we're sort of playing a bit more man to man, and so that meant that players like Eight Nori were pressing up, sort of extra high, even pressing against their back line, which you would think would leave us a bit open, but it just meant that a lot of times the only options they had were long balls to Broya and Jackson, which Kilman and Dawson both sort of swept up for the most part, except for a couple little hiccups during that.
Here's an
game.
awesome strategy. Especially, I mean, there's no timeout, so hey, you kind of got a timeout, got to reset. It was smart.
I thought it was smart that he picked on Aït-Nouri to do it. Obviously, he was the one who was just coming back from an injury, so you wouldn't be suspicious about it.
Yeah.
But when he went down, I was like, "Oh no!" I was just fearing the worst. So he pulled the wool over my eyes perfectly. So
yeah, I'm sure it had more to do with the fact that Aït-Nouri is right against the touchline there. But
yeah,
I agree that everybody that I communicate with during a match day had their hearts in their throats, because we were just like, oh god damn it, it's Aït-Nouri again. He's gonna be injured, he's gonna come off, we're gonna have to use a sub in the first 10 minutes. So hopefully that cleared up the mystery, although probably not. And go read that thread. Again, EBL 2017 is where you want to go if you want to see that. It's a pretty good thread about the tactics involved in that game. The next one is also from Twitter, from Supergran at Christine WWFC. Did Josh pass on the secret goal scoring curse beater to Gary? 3 games and 9 goals. It's definitely working.
So look, there were some questions after the last last podcast, because Wolves did get shut out against West Ham. I will now admit I did not watch that game because I was on death's bed from old-fashioned flu. And when I say the old-fashioned flu, I do not mean the flu. I mean, okay, probably I should have stopped after 6 old fashions. It may have been the other 2 or 3 that kind of got me there. So I missed that game. So clearly it's a combination of both the lemon and the salt, and I better be fucking awake for the game. Now Nathan Judah has responded on the video, so it's possible he could have brought it up to Gary O'Neill. Look at this, huh? I mean, the chances are very slim, but Paul and I will get a chance to ask Nathan that potentially this weekend, who is going to be in town for Houston for his beloved Washington Huskies. Paul, you think Nathan's going to duck us?
no, I think I think there'll be some good selfies on display, and maybe some lemon and salt and tequila involved as well.
Here's my goal. Here's my goal. I want to see if I can get enough drinks in Judah that he will rub his arms or his legs with salt and lemon.
Oh my god.
Yeah, please don't.
That's my goal. I don't know how much it'll take. I haven't drunk with this guy, so we'll see. But you know what? That could make for some good content for you, right, Danny?
Josh, please do not rub any fruit on the visiting Englishman.
What if we go to a Korean place and I rub kimchi?
That's different. That's totally different. That's wishing for good luck for Hwang in the Asia Cup, where he scores like 3 hat tricks in the group stage, but they somehow magically lose all of them and have to go home early, so he comes back to us.
I would be fine with that. So yeah, if Gary hasn't heard about this yet, I'm gonna make sure he does hear about it from Judah.
I'm impressed that you're willing for that to be the first thing that Gary O'Neill knows about you.
I mean, what else do I got going for me, guys? Let's be Hey,
Not the podcast, certainly
there's
not.
this idiot from Alabama who lives in Houston who gets drunk on a podcast and talks about you all the time. Like
All right. enough said about that, certainly. The next question we have is from Drew Freakin on Twitter. What do you think Johnny's New Year's resolution is? And with Fabio and Frazier out on loan, can Wolves afford to loan Big Sassy as well? So those are two pretty separate questions. Paul, what do you think Johnny's New Year's resolution is?
I think he'll be like one of those guys who's like, the past is in the past, and let's move forward. And I think his New Year's resolution will be solely based around trying to find a new club.
I think that Johnny's New Year's resolution could be summed up in one word: Goose Fraba. From Anger Management.
You're gonna have to explain that one.
From Anger Management with Adam Sandler and Jack Nicholson. And he always, to get him to calm down, he'd have him say Goose Fraba. So there we go. I think Johnny needs, just to simmer down a little bit. Maybe he'll go somewhere where there's like, a good supply of CBD or something. I don't know. Something to just take the edge off of it.
Yeah, I haven't. It's been a long time since college. I haven't looked up the states of legality in Europe and where it might be available or not.
Yeah, for the second question, they can't afford to loan them out until they get in somebody. There's no way.
Paul, you agree?
I think there could be moving parts in place that may see him leave, and if he does leave before anyone else comes in, I think that's just more of a confirmation that something's happening and something's imminent. So I could see it, but not too much of a time like between the two.
Who would be the backup number 9? Only wrong answers accepted, Paul.
I've
got mine.
I've got my answer.
I've totally got my answer.
Mine's got to be for his winner versus Chelsea. It's got to be Doherty.
That's the answer.
Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah, I thought Cody as well. But
how can we fit Tom King and Swans in though as well?
I was just gonna say, because did you see
that goalie in like Scotland? Yeah,
the Scottish Championship. Josh, did you see this?
Yes, that was nuts.
I guess for people who didn't see it, go look up a video. But Abrath, I hope I'm doing justice to that.
No,
who are in the Scottish Championship, had no more players on their bench who were not goalkeepers, and had to make a substitution. So they put on a goalkeeper as a striker, and that guy probably scored a goal that their striker would have been jealous of. Talk about worldies. And then there's a second string goalkeeper in the Scottish Championship scoring, I think it was an equalizer from like 30 yards out easily. It was stunning.
Banger.
Yeah.
All right. On to the last question, which is from a good friend of the pod, Stu, on Twitter. On the back of the UFL news, would you watch a summer series of soccer if it was for players who were free agents and or youth team kids who hadn't broken through yet? And I will admit, I had to Google UFL. I hadn't realized that we were still trying to make XFL, UFL things happen.
That's just because you don't live in Houston, home of the Houston Roughnecks. Hold it down, baby. Woo woo.
What's my local team?
You don't have one. Although I guess you could argue the Washington Commanders is that quality.
is basically the XFL.
I'll be honest, I don't think I'd watch it. I mean, I already got MLS during the summer. That's enough for me. I know you would watch it though.
Well, I think here's the thing. I think that as a paying prospect for American fans, probably not a great idea, because especially free agents, are Americans tuned in enough to European soccer to know all the various players, even if they're relatively famous, like David De Gea, and then like want to go pay to see them? But what about like recently retired players, all cobbled together? You wouldn't have enough for a league, but you have like two teams. So it's like, did Zlatan actually retire, or is he still going? You have your Zlatans and whatever, and it's just cobbled together into like the most unwatchable team ever against some other similar team. Would you watch that, Paul?
It's stretching it. There was, oh man, there was one that Sky used to show during the summer of like veterans and legends indoor. Someone will get in touch, probably Stu, to remind me what it was called, but it's been that long ago. And I would always watch that religiously because it was very regionalized. So that Wolves legend team would play a West Brom, Coventry, Villa, Birmingham, all in that pool. So you had that little competition in there. And then I always thought, man, if we won that tournament, that was what was going to happen in real life for the actual team, and it never worked out that way. I'm sure Wolves won it like at least one time. So maybe something like that. We're verging on that a little with this line, the 7-on-7 tournament in in the where was it now? Near Charlotte, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That in that part of the world. So I don't think that'd capture the imagination. But if it was something like, I don't know how they could do it in a way, like if it did tour abroad during the pre-season, but still somehow kept the name of the team or some association with it, like the when LA Wolves came over, back to that type of setup. Maybe there's some possibility there, but yeah, I still think it'd be too diluted to really capture the imagination.
The only thing that could save that league would be if Richmond, Virginia had one of the teams, and it was Richmond FC.
Richmond Greyhounds.
Yep. That would at least get viewers watching for one game. But could be enough to pay for the league, honestly.
Put Jason Sudeikis on the sideline. Start printing money.
Yeah. I mean, look at Wrexham. Nobody knew who Wrexham was before. Now people go there and just, buy Wrexham stuff.
That's it for No Stupid Questions. I guess Alex usually says that you can always reach us at hello@wholelotofwolves or out on X or Twitter or whatever. So do that. Send me questions or memes. Come back, Alex.
Come back soon, Alex. Boy, he's definitely earned that producer title there, huh?
You don't know how hard it is.
Yeah, right.
Behind the scenes. So that does, in fact, bring this week's show to an end. We're going to be back early next week to review that Brentford game. Take a look at what's happening in those days with the transfer window being open before that long break again. So thanks to Danny on the socials, Alex for such sterling work in his junior vice president of producing capacity. He's got another promotion. And in the meantime, for everyone out there, let's keep that momentum going. We're up for the cup. So it's up the mighty Wolves.